to summarize the theme of Leonardo da Vinci's life, the theme of this great university, the theme would be unification. Unification of the world of art with the world of science. Well, when I was a child, I had two role models. One was Albert Einstein. If you were to summarize his life into one word, it would be unification. Unifying matter and energy, unifying space and time. And then he spent the last 30 years of his life chasing after the greatest unification of all time, the theory of everything. And he was so frustrated that he could not get an equation that would allow him to, quote, read the mind of God. Well, today, we think we have that theory. Well, one of my favorite Einstein stories is when he was so frustrated walking around the streets of Princeton, children would flock to see this gray-haired Einstein walk down the streets of their hometown. And one day, you could hear him roar with laughter talking to a 10-year-old child. Well, the mother of this child went up to her son and said, "Son, what did you say to Einstein that made him laugh so much today?" The mother was so proud. And then the son said, "Oh, I asked him whether he went to the bathroom this morning." Well, the mother was mortified. And then she said, "Well, then what did Einstein say?" And then the little boy said, "Einstein said, 'Ah, at last, somebody asked me a question that I can answer.'" Well, today, we physicists believe that we are on the verge of being able to summarize the four great forces of nature into a single master theory. The forces of gravity, the forces of electricity and magnetism, the two nuclear forces, into a single comprehensive theory 1 inch long. First of all, we have the theory of gravity. Gravity keeps you on this floor. Gravity attracts everything around its vicinity to create gravity around the Earth. Or, as we say in our astronomy courses, when we teach our kids, gravity sucks. Gravity sucks evenly. It pulls everything to the center. But then Einstein gave us a different picture. Gravity doesn't suck at all. We tell our students, "We lied to you." Gravity does not pull you to the floor. Space pushes you down. Why are you sitting in your chair today? Does gravity pull you to the floor? No. There is no such thing as gravitational pull. We lied to you. The space around you is warped, and space itself is pushing you down into your chair, and that's why you're sitting in your chair today. And then we have the electromagnetic force, the force of light, laser beams, the force of computers, the force that illuminates this university. And it's absolutely amazing that we can summarize the electromagnetic force into an equation 1/2 inch long. Think about this. The world's wealth tied to the internet, computers, technology, lasers, satellites, can be summarized by an equation 1/2 inch long. That equation says the four-dimensional divergence of an antisymmetric second-rank tensor equals 0. And in fact, at Berkeley, where I got my PhD, you can buy a t-shirt which says, "In the beginning, God said, the four-dimensional divergence of an antisymmetric second-rank tensor equals 0, and there was light, and it was good, and on the seventh day he rested." This amazing electromagnetic force allows us to create computers the size of a pinhead. Think about this. In the future, we can take an aspirin pill, put a computer inside, put a camera inside, you swallow this aspirin pill, and it photographs your inside by computers. This eliminates the most dreaded word that every male hates, colonoscopies. And this gives new meaning for the expression, Intel inside. Think about it. Chips that cost a penny because of the electromagnetic force. We're putting them in everywhere, into our toys, for example. This is creating a problem for the English language. a new contradiction in terms called smart Barbie dolls. Another contradiction in terms is Microsoft Works. That is also a contradiction in terms. This force, this electromagnetic force, will also be in your glasses in the future. Your glasses will not only be able to download from the internet, you'll have a home office in your glasses, teleconferencing to the office, download any video, download any website in your glasses, including face recognition. Your glasses will be able to recognize people's faces and spit out an entire biography for you. How many times have you been at a conference like this and you bump into somebody and you say to yourself, who is this person? Jim, John, Jake, I know this person. Who is this person? In the future, your glasses will say, it's Jim, stupid, remember? You saw him last week. Do you want to see his entire biography for you in your glasses? Or let's say afterwards, you are mingling with people, and you know there's some very heavy hitters in the audience, and you don't know who they are. In the future, you will know exactly who to suck up to at any cocktail party. Compliments of the electromagnetic force. Then we have the nuclear force, the force that lights up the stars. The secret of the heavens is locked in the nuclear force. But every time we smash a proton, and when I was in high school, that's what I did, smash atoms when I was in high school. When you smash atoms, what do you get? More particles. More particles. How many particles are there? Hundreds, thousands of goddamn subatomic particles. In the 1950s, we were drowning in all these subatomic particles. So, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, once made a declaration. The Nobel Prize in physics shall go to the physicist who does not discover a new particle this year. Well, I had to memorize the names of all these goddamn subatomic particles to get my PhD. Tau mesons, neutrinos, leptons, muons, Yang-Mills particles, Higgs bosons, thousands of them. I would hope that in the future, when you get your PhD at Berkeley, all you would have to do is say, string theory, and you would get your PhD. Yes, we do believe that there is a master theory that eluded Einstein in the last years of his life. And we do think that at the basis of all this, instead of having dots called electrons, instead of having dots called protons, dots called neutrinos, we have little rubber bands. Little rubber bands. So if you look at an electron with a super microscope, you don't see a dot, you see a vibrating rubber band. And if you twang it, it turns into a neutrino. You hit it, it turns into a quark. You hit it again, it turns into a Higgs boson. You keep twanging that rubber band, and you get the thousands of subatomic particles that I had to memorize to get my PhD. This is incredible. The enormous diversity that we see around us can be summarized by music. The Greeks believed in something called the Pythagorean way. That music, the music of lyre strings, the music of lyre strings could explain the diversity of the universe. Well, the Pythagorean dream never went anywhere. But now we're coming back to the dream of the Pythagoreans. So what are these particles? Nothing but musical notes on a vibrating string. What is physics? Physics is nothing but the harmonies of these strings. What is chemistry that you struggled with in high school? Melodies we can play on these strings. What is the universe? The universe is a symphony of strings. And what is the mind of God? Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in history, we now have a candidate for Einstein's mind of God. The mind of God is cosmic music resonating through 11-dimensional hyperspace. Hyperspace. When I was a child, growing up outside San Francisco, I used to go to the Japanese tea garden And I used to watch the carp swimming just beneath the lily pads. And then I asked myself a question only a child would ask. What would it be like to be a fish swimming in a shallow pond? And then I realized that fish have eyes to the side of their face. They can't see above the pond. They would say the pond is everything. The universe is two-dimensional. You can swim forward, backward, left, right. But any fish that talked about the world of up, any fish that dared talk about the third dimension, any fish that dared to talk about unseen universes beyond the lily pads was considered a crackpot. And then I imagined a carp scientist, a scientist living in the pond. And the scientist would say, "Bah, humbug, there is no world of up. There is no third dimension. There is no hyperspace. The pond is all there is. What you see is what there is." And then I imagined as a child reaching down and grabbing the fish scientist, lifting him into the world of up. What would the fish scientist see? The fish scientist would see beings moving without fins, a new law of physics. Beings breathing without water, a new law of biology. And then I put the fish back into the pond, and I wondered, what stories would he tell his fellow fish? Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we physicists believe, and we hope to prove, maybe starting next month, that we are the fish. We spend all our life in three dimensions, going forward, backward, left, right, up, down. But anyone who dares talk about unseen universes, anyone who dares talk about a world beyond three dimensions, anyone who talks about hyperspace is considered a crackpot. Until now. Now we believe that perhaps there are these unseen worlds, and next month we hope to prove some of these things with the opening of the biggest machine of science ever created, the Large Hadron Collider. The biggest machine of science, 17 miles in circumference, and contrary to popular belief, it's not going to destroy the world. Rest assured that it's not going to destroy the universe. Our machine is a machine of science. You know, people ask the question, how come we don't got a machine? How come the Europeans in Geneva, how come the European Union got this machine? Well, we had our chance. Our machine was called the Super Collider, and it was to be built outside Dallas, Texas. Ronald Reagan was pushing that machine. But you know, on the last day of hearings, one congressman said to a physicist, quote, "Will we find God with your machine? If so, I will vote for it." Well, the poor physicist had to answer that question. So what did the physicist say? He said, "We will discover with this $11 billion machine the Higgs boson, another subatomic particle." Well, you could hear all the jaws hit the floor. $11 billion for another goddamn subatomic particle. The vote was taken the next day. Our machine was canceled. Congress gave us $1 billion to dig the hole. Then Congress canceled our machine in 1993 and gave us a second $1 billion to fill up that hole. $2 billion to dig a hole and fill it up. That's the wisdom of our leaders. Well, we physicists have wondered, how should we have answered that question? We replay that scene over and over in our mind. How should we answer that question? Well, I would have said something different. I would have said, God, by whatever signs or symbols you ascribe to the deity, this machine will take us as close as humanly possible to his greatest creation, Genesis. This is a Genesis machine. This machine will help to recreate the glory of the most stupendous event in history, the creation of the universe itself. Well, instead, we said Higgs boson, and our machine was canceled. Sorry about that. And then people ask the question, well, Mr. Professor, if you're so smart, what's in it for numero uno? What's in it for me? I mean, am I going to get better color television with your machine? Am I going to get better internet reception with your machine? Well, in some sense, yes. The technology of the unification of all forces includes the electromagnetic force. But we will also answer some of the deepest questions of space and time. Is time travel possible? Is it possible to bend space into a pretzel? What happened before the Big Bang? What happened before Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1? What does it all mean? These are the questions that we hope to answer with the Large Hadron Collider. For example, I recently wrote a book, Physics of the Impossible. And I'm proud to announce today that I just found out, just a few days ago, that the book, Physics of the Impossible, has now been on the New York Times bestseller list for 4 weeks running. Who would have thought? A book with the word physics in it. Number 12 in the United States right now. It's also the #1 science book in the country. So in that book, I do address the question of time travel. Is it possible to relive the past? Is it possible to change the past? Well, let me tell you a short story. If you think you're so smart, figure this one out. We physicists actually study this story. Listen carefully. The year is 1945. It is a dark and stormy night. A drifter comes in from the darkness carrying a baby girl inside a basket that he leaves at an orphanage. Well, the nuns pick up this baby girl the next day. They don't know what else to call her, so they call her Jane. And Jane grows up wondering, who is my mother, my father, my sister, my brother? I was left as a foundling on a doorstep. And then when Jane is 19 years of age, she falls in love. A handsome drifter comes into her life, but it was not meant to be. They quarrel, and the boyfriend stomps off into the darkness, never to be seen again. But it's a very sad story. Jane finds out she's pregnant. She's rushed to the hospital 9 months later, delivers a beautiful baby girl. But that very same night, somebody breaks open the window of the hospital and kidnaps Jane's precious baby girl. And it's even worse than this. The doctors find out she's bleeding. She's dying. To save Jane's life, the doctors perform an emergency operation and change Jane into Jim. Well, Jim wakes up the next day saying, oh my God, I was left as a foundling, raised by nuns, fell in love, got pregnant, somebody steals my baby, and now I'm not even Jane anymore. Well, Jim gets into barroom fistfights anytime someone says, hey, Jim, where did you come from anyway? Who was your mother, your father, your brother, your sister? Well, one day, Jim is now stone drunk on the bottom of a bar, again. But this time, the bartender comes up to Jim and says, wake up, Jim, wake up. You know, I'm really a time traveler. I'm not really a bartender. Come into my machine and let us find out who is Jane/Jim. So they go back into the past, way back into the past. And so poor Jim doesn't know where he is. But then he meets this beautiful 19-year-old girl, and it's love at first sight. But you know, it was not meant to be. They quarrel, and Jim stomps off into the darkness. But then Jim later finds out his girlfriend's pregnant. And Jim says, oh my God, I don't want history to repeat itself. I want to make sure that my baby gets the best education possible. So Jim goes to the hospital, breaks open the window, steals his own precious baby girl, and goes back into the time machine. Back, way back, until it is 1945. It is a dark and stormy night. Jim comes in from the darkness carrying his precious baby girl that he drops off at an orphanage in a basket. Well, the nuns pick up the baby girl the next day. They don't know what else to call her, so they call her Jane. And Jane grows up wondering, who is my mother, my father, my brother, my sister? Well, Jim, meanwhile, finally gets it together. And he says, I'm going to make something of my life. I don't want to be a drunk all my life. So he joins the Time Travelers Corps and has many heroic feats in the annals of time. Now, Jim is an old man. He's an old man now, and he's about to retire. But he asked for permission for one last mission in time, and that is to put on a mustache, put on some wig, and impersonate a bartender to meet a certain barroom drunk who gets into fistfights anytime someone asks him, "Who are you, Jim? Where'd you come from? Who is your mother, your father?" Now, for 10 points, who can tell me, who is Jane's mother, father, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, grandfather, granddaughter, great-great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-great-granddaughter? Jane. She's a family tree unto herself. Can you imagine a family get together one day and they get into a food fight and someone says, "You did this to me." "No, you did that to yourself." Well, think about it, because we do. We physicists are now grappling with the ultimate question of space and time itself. And now let me end on one story. I spoke at the Einstein Centennial, and my favorite Einstein story is this. When Einstein was an old man, he was tired of giving the same talk over and over again. So one day his chauffeur came up to him and said, "Professor Einstein, I may look like a chauffeur, but I'm a part-time actor. And I've heard your talk so many times, I've memorized it. I can give your talk. So why don't we switch places? And I will be the great Einstein, and you can take a break and be my chauffeur." Well, Einstein loved a good joke, so they switched places. The chauffeur put on a mustache, put on some wigs, and then he became the great Einstein, giving talks. Well, this went very well, until one day, somebody in the back, a mathematician, asked a very difficult question. And Einstein thought, "Oh, the joke is up." But then the chauffeur said, "That question is so elementary that even my chauffeur here can answer it for you." Thank you very much.